This is Bobby at Copel TV Repair with a video today showing our experience troubleshooting and fixing Hisense 50H 5G, and that was brought in by a customer. The unit was totally dead. It is laying up here, and this is how it looks. And this video is not a functionality proof as many of our other videos, and it's not going to be a complete troubleshooting guide either. It is just going to show some of the things that we learned. The problem that we've seen may or may not be unique. We don't know that yet. We haven't seen too many of those TVs. But the set came totally dead. And we first looked at the power supply board, which outputs, as you can see here on the table that is printed on it, it outputs 12 volts at 3 amps and 16 volts at 1.5 amps plus the LED output voltage of 200 volts at 400 milliamps. So one of the first things that we did was to test the SB pin on the board. There it is, and it is apparently 12 volts supposed to be, because again there's nothing else going out of that board, and there was nothing there. So what we did was we measured there was nothing going there when AC was going in. So we took the power board out, and as soon as we did, we saw those burn marks, and those transistors were blown off, and then we knew why the problem was in the power supply board. In addition to those transistors, which drives the LED transformer, we replaced those. The resistors that drive them were burned as well, and we will be selling that as a repair kit. But once we fixed those, the board was still not coming up. It turned out there was a problem here in the standby side. There was still no standby. I can see one diode here was replaced, maybe that transistor as well. I have to see the notes, but there was additional damage. Once the standby voltage appeared and the board was coming up, the TV was unfortunately still dead. But knowing that we had standby, we switched our focus to the main board, and what we noticed on the main board was that this coil was heating excessively. And sure enough, we found shortage on it between ground, chassis, and the output of that coil, and the same could have been found on some of the small capacitors underneath the board. So we ended up swapping up the board with one that we bought from eBay. Unlike ours, the board that we got was powering on the TV. We could see the red light coming from the up-to input, and the TV was coming out and actually producing sound. However, there was no backlight, and there was nothing here. So naturally we thought, okay, the LEDs maybe. But at that point, the TV was already beyond worth repairing, because power supply, main board, now LEDs. It was actually abandoned here by the customer because of all those bad things. So we tested the back LEDs with the usual tester, and the LEDs came up fine. But one thing that you should know, and you may have learned by now, is that sometimes this tester will make the LEDs come up, but the power supply boards may fail to do so. And that is because power supply boards have relatively narrow range of voltage that they can produce in order to provide the current that they're designed to provide. Where this is a much broader scope, and I have seen more than one case where a backlight assembly has a few backlights that are bad, a few LEDs that are bad, and this driver, if you just apply voltage there at the connector, will show visible light on the back of the panel, that is before you dismantle it. But if you plug it in the actual power supply board, it actually doesn't kick in. So this can sometimes be misleading. The problem was either there was enough LEDs to kick out the power supply, or there was still something that wasn't fixed there on the power supply board. What we ended up doing was we found a power supply board from another TV that was producing very similar output range, one Samsung, that was activated as soon as the board is connected to a power. It's somewhere over there in the stack of boards. And we used it to power that strip, and it came up and was staying solid, which was still not 100% guarantee, but made us feel a whole lot more that the problem was still on the power supply board. We tested everything 10 times, and everything seemed to be fine. You know, no shorted components, no suspect low resistance anywhere where normally one would like to see. We checked those at least 10 times. They're driven by, those two are driven by this chip, which is the LED driver. So we ended up replacing the LED driver IC itself, and then actually fixed the problem. And now the whole TV is working fine. There was one problem with the main board. The one that came from eBay had different settings, and the screen came up with color distortion, which is something normal. Well, the panel being used is different, slightly different, and just the color information is encoded differently to it. Possibly the T-con. I've never actually seen the T-con. What we did to solve that problem, it's solvable usually by going to service menu and adjusting particular value that controls which color table is used for producing the output signals for the T-con. We don't have the service information for this particular TV, so what we ended up doing was replacing the EEPROM, which is on the back side of the TV, with the one from the original board, and that cured the problem with the color. So we will end up using this board that was bought on eBay, and it had a label on the back that said Walmart. That's really strange. Probably it was custom stuck later on. But anyhow, finally the whole TV is working. The repair was probably not worth, most likely not worth, because we ended up buying a new main board. What was wrong with the main board is actually, we still don't know, most likely the main IC, but it's also possible some of the small capacitors that are underneath are bad. At any rate, there is a shortage that can be measured here on this coil, and some of the smaller capacitors that are under the main IC. That is it. What I need to say is that there will be revisions of that board that will not be directly compatible with each other, apparently, and you might have to either reprogram them if you know how, or change the many EEPROM that carries the encoding information for the T-con. We'll be offering the EEPROMs, and we do know one of them comes from this particular monitor. Where does the other one comes from, the one that we received from the board from eBay? We don't know. One difference that I noticed between our board and the other was that the board that came from eBay doesn't have, after this, bracket 1. It also has a different number in the middle. Ours is just different, but we'll have both EEPROMs available if you ever decide. We'll also have the repair kit for the power. Hopefully that helps. Good luck with your repairs.